What's his name again? I mean, was that the Nobel?
So we really like, apparently people really like last year's share.
Genie.
Share.
To the right.
Okay. So since people really enjoyed last week's share and Rachel, we decided we'd try and go through women in Tanach to the best of our ability and see if we connect to them on a different level than what we're used to. So this week it's actually very one team with for Sky and Sarah. So we went back and we started to start with Sarah instead of Kava or Nama, just because it's easier to start with Sarah than go all the way back. So we know that Sarah had three names: Sarai, Yiska, and Sarah. Yiska was her original name.
Wasn't it Sarah?
No. Sarah is daughter of Asher. It's Sarai with a yud at the end. So Yiska literally means to see.
To what?
To see. There are two explanations for what that means. One is that she was blessed with divine inspiration. Some say it was Nebuah, some say it was Ruach HaKodesh, but she's some divine inspiration that she was able to see into the future, to what was her path in life. And two, that her beauty was a sight to behold, because she was exceedingly beautiful. And then we said last week that Rachel was also exceedingly beautiful, but there happens to be a list of 4 women that the Torah says had beauty beyond comparison, and Sarah is the head of that list. Yiska was only her name as a young girl. She chose to change it as she grew older and understood the concept of modesty.
Really sorry, I'm just something that I thought of now. And it may be a really stupid question. I may be embarrassing myself. But hey.
Ask. There's no stupid questions.
Can you all talk a bit now? Sorry. You said that Sarah was the top of the list in the beauty. When we talk about Sarah, should we say she was 127? The whole time that we ever talk about Sarah, is she always 127?
No.
Oh.
No.
Okay, so that's why I'm asking. Or like,
she was 127 when she died.
And she like, so I just feel like everything I ever heard about
because they darshan a lot on that specific pasuk, and you'll see that I have like 4 different explanations on that pasuk alone that talk about her beauty. And
she was like, funny, was the oldest one.
But her beauty was so uncomparable that she still topped that list. So back to Yiska here. So it was her name. That was what she was named at birth. It was her name as a young girl. She chose to change it as she became to understand the concept of modesty and royalty, and she decided she didn't want to be gazed upon anymore. She wanted to become more modest, so she kind of withdrew into herself a bit, and she changed her name so she would no longer be known as Yiska, and she would become known as Sarah.
Funny because Sarah is a much nicer name than Yiska.
Well, Yiska also means princess, like Sarai means princess, so it all kind of goes together. Yes, definitely today. So Sarai literally means my princess. She no longer wanted to be gazed upon, as I said. She wanted to live a life above that. So she acted with a concept of royalty. She became kind of noble, and she kind of withdrew herself from the common population. She said, I want to be above this. She chose to become a princess instead of a supermodel. Is the way I thought of it.
A princess?
Instead of a supermodel. Because, she had this beauty, and what do people do with beauty? They go out and they show it, but she didn't want to do that. She wanted to become above that.
I have a question, but you said Yiska, according to what you said, means like Kodesh, Nevuah.
It's one explanation of it. The second explanation is that it's beautiful, which is how most people understand what Yiska means. You'll see that her Nevuah never left her. The name Yiska never completely left her.
Okay.
So it basically, according to Rashi, when she changed her name to be Sarai, it means that she gained mastery over herself. She had complete control over who she was and where she wanted to be going in life. She became more aware of what her destiny was going to be, and she decided that she was going to follow a set path instead of the normal path that most of us would have chosen, which is, the fame and and the awareness, and she didn't want that for herself. So that's when she became Sarai. She knew she was destined to become the mother of an aristocratic nation.
How did she know them?
She had a sense of Ruach HaKodesh. She already had a sense of Ruach HaKodesh and Nevuah. It's not exactly clear exactly what she had or how she knew, but she had a sense of her direction in life and what was going to be.
Do you know what age that was when she changed her name?
It doesn't say an exact age. We know that she was known as Iska as a young child. It doesn't say exactly when she changed. The Yud that was on Sarai's name later comes added onto Yeshua much later in life. And then Sarai to become Sarah happens much later. Just a brief background, Sarah was born in Haran in the Jewish year of 1958, 1,958 years from creation. And Haran was Abraham's brother. Haran followed Abraham into fire, got destroyed. She was also Lot's sister. Okay, so that's just background.
She's the daughter of Haran?
Yes, she's a daughter of Haran.
And the sister of Lot?
Yes. When Sarah was 65, she and Abraham left Haran and they moved out into the desert on their way to Eretz Yisrael. So when we said that Sarah and Nevuah, there's different explanations, but what people have come out, they say that she was the only woman that Hashem spoke to directly in any manner.
Why did she then?
Even though there was other prophet, because it wasn't Hashem speaking to her there. We'll see. It's unclear exactly what it means that she had Nevuah, and some people say it's just Ruach HaKodesh. It's not. Nevuah is not an exact science either. There were other prophetesses, other women who had Nevuah, but she was the first one, and she's the one that Hashem spoke to directly. They say. I don't know exactly what that means, but in some manner, Hashem spoke to her differently than he spoke to other
I thought she
prophets.
was at a higher level than Abraham.
I'm about to say that. The Medrash says that Sarah's level of Nevuah was greater than that of Abraham's. Emek Davar disagrees with that and says that it cannot be, so it must be that she didn't have Nevuah, but rather that she had Ruach HaKodesh. And he means it's mean that that Ruach HaKodesh helps you understand what you're seeing, whereas Nevuah is a direct communication at a higher level. He brings two reasons why that Sarah had Ruach HaKodesh and not Nevuah, and that she was greater than Avram. Since Avram was busy with matters of the world, he didn't have as much time to isolate himself and connect to Kadosh Baruch Hu as Sarah did. Right, and Sarah was always in her tent, as it says over and over, where is your wife Sarah? She's in her tent. She was surrounded by Kedusha and Tahara there. The second reason is that Ruach HaKodesh can only come in the simcha of the mitzvah. So it's not that Avram wasn't happy to do the mitzvahs, but Sarah had a different level of simcha that came from it. She did it in this way of just complete and utter simcha to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. She gave herself over to it.
She was involved with HaKadosh Baruch Hu before she married Abraham?
It doesn't say that clearly, but in theory, yes.
So she was also aware of Hashem as he was.
Yes, in some form. It doesn't state that out clearly, but we can assume from the fact that she had some sort of vision that she was aware of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So he continues on to say that the second reason is that her right is only from Simcha. Avraham had betachon, where Sarah was known for her emunah, and she was never saddened because her emunah was so great. She was never sad. She was never sad, Ruth. She was never sad because she was, and that's how she was always be able to be immersed in Ruach HaKodesh. Now, to say that she wasn't human is probably not true, and we'll see later that there are instances where, people will say that she messed up. She was on a different level than most of us are. And I'm not telling you can never be sad, because we aren't on that level. But the point is that if we do the mitzvahs with simcha, we have a greater connection to them. And as you were saying before, mitzvahs you actually connect to and immerse yourself in, Hashem will always repay you.
It also says that Hashem is with a broken heart.
Yes. put it in a different manner. That's totally different idea. Okay. So even though we call her Sarah Imeninu, when we talk about her, really she was known as Sarai for most of her life. Is it Sarah that she marries Avram, moves to Haran with him from Ur Kasdim, and that she moves on to the desert and into Israel. She's always known as Sarai until basically the end. As I said, she'd already separated herself, so it is also as Sarai that she collects converts with Abraham. Avram wasn't Avram yet; he was Avram without the hay. So they were on different. They weren't on that high level yet, but they were still collecting converts as they went. These weren't converts in the true sense of today. They didn't stay once Abraham and Sarah moved on, but they came to some sort of recognition of Hakadosh Baruch Hu. And they built mikvahs for men and women separately, so they should, and taught them separately, which is, some will tell you is a lesson for life. Men and women should be separate in most things. Here's the interesting part, that Abraham is considered the father of nations in general. He's not just considered the father of the Jewish people, even though he is. Other nations can claim him as their father, such as Ishmael, etc., etc. But Sarah is only considered the mother of the Jewish people, even though she was considered princess. She was only a mother for the Jewish people. She was a princess for the world, but only a mother for the Jewish people. Okay, so now they're in Eretz Yisrael, life starts to get interesting. There's a famine as soon as they arrive in Eretz Yisrael, and Hashem tells them to go down to Egypt. Go down to Egypt. Avram says, I'm going to tell them you're my sister. Egypt was known to be completely lawless, evil, just not nice people. He hides her in his trunk, and he gets the customs agent at the border, and he says, you must have gold in here, you'll have to pay. No problem, I'll pay. And then the customs agent says, maybe you have pearls, I'll pay. And that made the customs agent suspicious, and he opened up the trunk, and he found Sarai. He saw this beautiful, beautiful woman, and he said, I can't keep her for myself. I'm sending her to Paro's palace. Now, Paro was just as evil as his people. And we'll see the differences between him and Avimelech is that Avimelech wasn't considered to be completely evil, which is why Hashem appeared to him in a dream, versus Paro was struck by plague after plague, and he still didn't really want to let Sarah go. Sarah davened, and when she davened, she created angels, because her prayer was so intense. And these angels came and they basically stood in front of her, and Paro saw them in whatever form he saw them, and they basically rescued her. And Paro sent her and Avram out, blaming them for everything, of course. But not only did he give her Hagar, which we all know, he also gave her the land of Goshen, which, if we remember later on, when Yaakov goes down after Yosef is there, they settle in the land of Goshen. It was already our land. It was given to Sarai, our matriarch, way back when. And the other interesting thing is that when she was released from Paro's custody, it was the 15th of Nisan. Same night the Jewish people were rescued later on. We see that there's always a correlation between the past and the future, especially when it comes to the Avos and the Imahot. And this, I didn't know these dates. I didn't know that she was given the land of Goshen. We always hear about Hagar, but she was given more than just Hagar. She was given a piece of land in Egypt. And we see later on that we settle there when we go down to Egypt. Okay, so now they're returning to Eretz Yisrael. There's no longer a famine. Hashem sends them back to Eretz Yisrael. They've been living in Eretz Yisrael for 10 years. They still don't have any children. They're married for years already, and they don't have children. And now Sarah has this handmaiden, this servant who was a princess living with them. She turns to Avram and says, take her maidservant. She knew that Avram was destined to be the father of nations. Maybe she wasn't meant to be, she didn't know exactly what it was going to be. Yes, she had some sense of her destiny, but it wasn't clear exactly how it was all going to play out. So last week we said Rachel gave her handmaiden, but she was also her half sister. This Hagar she was an Egyptian princess. She was no one. Last week we said that Rachel gave her handmaiden, but Bilhah was also her half sister. But here, Hagar is no one. she was an Egyptian princess. She's not related to them. She was acting as a servant because her father gave them to them. Better you live in the house of God than here, whatever. But can you imagine you give your husband your maid, right? So imagine it was that much harder for her. But it wasn't as a maid that she gave him to her. She gave him to her to be a wife, and she said, take her. I've worked with her for 10 years. Take her. I've taught her.
Human. I told you that. You said she's human.
She is human because it was hard for her. She didn't do it because she wanted to. She did it because she knew there was something greater at play.
But there's like levels, yeah.
There are levels, and she was on that high level because she was the matriarch. But Hagar had grown a bit in her time as the maidservant for Sarai, but she never really reached that level of completion through self-growth that Sarah had reached. So when she was elevated to the status of wife and fell pregnant immediately, which they say was because Hashem didn't want Abraham to have a long-standing relationship with her, she started afflicting Sarah, belittling her, not being nice to her. And now Sarah turned around and said, this is not okay. And she started kind of afflicting her, and doesn't say what she did. Some say it was in public, some say it was in private. She started treating her like a maid again. Whatever it was, it's not clear exactly what she did. But there are those who say that because she afflicted Hagar. Now, Hagar wasn't evil, even though we all kind of like to think that Hagar was evil because she's Ishmael, but she really wasn't evil. She was human, as Yocheved would like to say. She was just a normal person. She'd been a princess and she'd been made. Now she's elevated back to the status of a wife. So she kind of started acting above her station. But Sarah was on a higher level than her. So it wasn't okay what Hagar was doing. So therefore Sarah afflicted her, which wasn't necessarily wrong. It depends who you follow. But the Ramban says here that because Sarah afflicted Hagar, therefore Ishmael was born. Ishmael would then come to afflict the Jews for generations to come. The Ohr HaChaim says that when Hagar started belittling Sarah, she thought only evil can come from those who rise above themselves. And so it says that
Who said that? Sorry?
the Ohr HaChaim.
No, but say it again.
The Ohr HaChaim says that when Hagar started belittling Sarah, she thought that only evil can come.
Sorry.
Yeah. Evil can come from someone who belittles those who are better than them. Then it goes on to say that Sarah placed an ayin hara on Hagar, which I do not recommend doing because Sarah was on such a high level that when the books were opened, it was fine for her to place that ayin hara. Most of us would not be in that same position, so don't go around placing ayin haras on people.
Oh, okay.
Because they say when you place an ayin hara, Hashem opens up your books first. So just be wary. Anyways, this ayin hara caused Hagar to lose that first pregnancy and caused Hagar to run away because she wasn't really strong enough in her sense of self to know that she should cleave to Abraham and Sarah's house. So, it was only to the second time when she came back that she had Ishmael. And again, as I said, Sarah didn't know exactly how she was going to be the mother of a nation. There are plenty of great people out there who never have children. Their students become their children, etc. This could have been the case with Ishmael as well. She didn't know exactly what was going to be. Yes, she had a sense of Nevuah and Ruach HaKodesh, but Nevuah doesn't tell you everything. It's not going to lay out your life for you. This is what's going to happen. It's going to show you bits and pieces and what you need to know as you need to know. All right. Then now we get to name changes of Avram and Sarah. They no longer are called Sarah and Avram. Avram gets his name changed at the bris when he performs when he's 99 years old. He changes his name to become Abraham, and Hashem says, do not call her Sarai. She's now known as Sarah. So now Sarah's truly reached that true status of princess, but she's known to the nations of the world. They know who she is. And the name change acted as a spiritual conduit to change their mazel a bit, so that they would be able to have children together. Right? We know the story, the bris milah of Abram, the 3 angels that came, and now why is Sarah laughing? As Yocheved said, if she hadn't have both. But she didn't recognize these men as angels for whatever reason. I didn't see an explanation for this. I did wonder, they're surrounded by angels all the time, but these angels didn't show themselves as angels, as malachim. They showed themselves as men, and they gave her a bracha. They gave Aaron the bracha, and Sarah overheard it from her tent, and she laughed. Why did she laugh? It was a laughter of happiness, of shock, of disbelief. She was 89. Her husband was 99. She had no womb. She had
89.
She was 89. Her husband was 99. But she had no womb. Like, she didn't think she'd ever be able to have children. Now, at 89, someone's coming and saying, in a year's time, by this mark on the wall, you're going to have a child. Wouldn't you have laughed? I probably would have laughed.
Yeah.
So, the interesting, right, we learned from the pasuk, from the double phrasing in the pasuk, that she was barren and she was childless, that she did not even have the ability to have children. That's where the idea that she had no wombs come from. We know that Hashem remembered her on Rosh Hashanah, but this was already about 6 months after the Malachim came to her. We know this because the Malachim then went on to save Lot, and Lot gave them matzah because it was Pesach time. So these things don't take place immediately. You get brachos and you think, oh, it's just going to happen. We never know when those brachos are going to happen and when they're going to take effect. So we know that around Rosh Hashanah, she was given the ability to have children, a womb, and she became pregnant with Yitzchak. Okay, so their names are changed. Now they move out of the area they're in because the 5 cities were destroyed, and Avram was all about Tanach and he wanted to have travelers, but with the cities destroyed, there'd be no more travelers, etc. So they went down to an area that's called Gerar, which is the Plishtim, Avimelech. Again, Avram doesn't ask you, just says you're going to be called my sister. No, Avram's not known for lying, so the Chazal comes to teach us that grandchildren are considered to be like children. So to say that she was his sister wasn't necessarily a lie in his eyes. And again, she's taken to the king's palace, to Avimelech's palace. But Avimelech the Plishtim weren't lawless and completely evil like the Egyptians were. They were not necessarily good people, but they were people. So Hashem did appear to Avimelech in a dream and says, do not touch this woman. She is a wife of someone else. But his whole household was also affected with the plague of, it was more than constipation. They couldn't do anything. They couldn't give birth, nothing. Even the animals in the house, everything. So therefore, she was taken captive and then she was released, and Abimelech asked Abraham and Sarah to daven for him, and they say that here, because they davened for him, they had mercy on someone else, Hashem showed them mercy. And then she becomes pregnant with Yitzchak. And we learn from there to daven for someone else, and Hashem will show you in return. Now, as we said already, she gets pregnant with Yitzchak. It's a huge miracle. She was 89, now she's 90, her husband's 100. She now has a womb when she never had a womb before. But even more than that, her hair turned black again. Her skin became smooth and young. No more wrinkles, no more. She didn't look old. She returned to that beauty, even though she was always beautiful, but she returned to that beauty of a younger age. She became young again, literally.
Yeah, about that.
Is it not going to spoil the kitten from the bucket over? I don't know if it was the cat. Is that you, Sarah? The cat.
Even more than that, so and they say that when she got a womb, her menses suddenly appeared, etc.
How interesting.
They also say that she did not experience any pain during childbirth, which was already the effect from the curse from Chava was already in effect here, but she did not experience the pain of childbirth.
I want to ask you something, Maya. She was always beautiful. Abimelech took her
Yes.
because she was so beautiful.
Yes.
She was 89.
Yes.
So how much more beautiful could she be? Because he thought she, at 89, that she was so beautiful, she wanted to have a daughter.
You're right, but there's a beauty of nobility,
youth.
and there's a beauty of youth, right? There's a beauty when your hair's black or brown or red, whatever color your hair was when you were younger, right? There's a beauty in that. When your skin no longer has the wrinkles and it comes smooth again. Why not? You're not beautiful. You're not beautiful. You're not beautiful. We're all beautiful. She was beautiful in a different way. It was a regal bearing. It was nobility. It was the way her face shone, whatever it might be. It doesn't describe her beauty beyond for this area and to say that she was beautiful. It doesn't actually tell us what it, how she was beautiful. So I can't tell you, because it no one says, because it's not important to people. So now we know that Yitzhak was born, and they had a big party. Some say it was when he was weaned, some say it was on the 8th day, whatever. She had a big party. They also tell us that one of the reasons for this party, and another aspect of this party, is that the milk of the noblewoman dried up. They were no longer able to nurse their children, so they would have to come to this party so that Sarah could nurse their babies. Why? Because there was many rumors swirling around that Sarah only was able to become pregnant because of Abimelech. Yeah, because the story of the pregnancy and her birth took place right after to return from Abimelech's house. So people not so naturally assumed that the child was Abimelech's. So this is why Yitzchak was created in the image of his father. He looked exactly like Abraham, to dispel any rumors there might be of his parentage. This was the fulfillment of Sarah's destiny to become the mother of a noble nation. Yitzchak was the beginning of that nation. Okay, so now we know that Sarah was known for her modesty and humility, but we also don't realize that she stood up for what was right, even when it was hard, even when other people disagreed with her. And when it might cause her husband pain. And we all have this, right? We sometimes stop and think, is this the right thing to do? Maybe it is the right thing to do. We don't continue forward because it's going to cause someone else pain. We should continue forward if it really is truly the right thing to do. She sent Hagar and Ishmael away. Ishmael was 13. She saw him acting inappropriately with her son. She sent them away into the desert. She said to Avram, take them out, keep them out, send them away. And Hashem said to Avram, listen to your wife. But she had to see it. Avram couldn't see it. This is another example of why she was greater than Abraham. She was able to see things that he wasn't able to see.
Sometimes she didn't want to see something. It was his son. It wasn't.
Exactly. It was his son, but you still have to be able to see the flaws of your children as well. Doesn't mean you shouldn't love them. What?
Yitzchak didn't see that.
Yitzchak was a baby.
Yitzchak also didn't see that his son was.
Right. But it's a problem. We have to be able to see your children's flaws. It's the only way we can teach them and show them the right path, which is what Sarah's point is, that there comes to be a point in time when you can no longer teach your children because they're not learning from you the things that they're supposed to be learning. Ishmael took too much after his mother. Now, I said earlier, Hagar wasn't evil. She wasn't evil. But she came from Paro, who was evil. And
she was Ham.
She was a person. She wasn't from the same path of Avram and Sarah. And she didn't have that inner strength to pass on to her child. And this is the thing. We all have things that we pass on to our children. There's such a thing as spiritual DNA. There's such a thing, what we teach them, they remember. We all do this. We all remember things from our childhood, things that we either didn't change or things that we did change. For whatever reason, there are things. And there is such a thing as spiritual DNA. It doesn't mean that when we weren't from that, our children aren't going to be completely affected by that. We changed ourselves. That means we also changed our DNA. And this is what Sarah's essence is all about. She worked on herself, ladies. She spent her life working on herself to become complete. Can you even like we all have to work on ourselves, and the more we work on ourselves, the more we connect to our world, the more who the person will become. So this is important aspect of life, is working on yourself. All right, so they sent Avram, Yishmael, and Hagar away, and then the Akeda happened soon after that. Okay, and now we get to Sarah's death. This week's Parsha.
But Ishmael goes with him to the Akeda.
Yes, he does. He comes back and when he's older and wants to live with Avram again. It doesn't really explain how he got to go with them to the.
Okay, but some time passed from the time that he threw
Yes,
them
because
out to the time of.
well, remember when he threw them out, Yitzhak was a baby. At the time in Akeda, also at the time in Akeda, Yitzhak was 37 years old.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Avram was 137 already. Okay.
So it wasn't, it wasn't immediate, but the Torah just goes from one thing to the next. It doesn't, there's not a whole lot of time in between in the Torah. This is what happens. Okay, now we get to Sarah's death, which is this week's parsha. The first two pasukim deal with Sarah's death. So she lived for 107 years. We know the famous Rashi that breaks up pasukim and darshans that she was as pure as she was when she was 7, and she is beautiful as she was when she was 20, when she was 100, etc. Okay, so there's a lot more maforshim on this. Some of them are clear, some of them aren't, but some of them are very interesting. So we'll try and go through some of them until we have to stop. So just a brief idea here is that the last 37 years of her life, Sarah was complete. She felt fulfilled. She fulfilled her destiny. She was complete. She still cleaved to Hashem. She still, tried to make converts, but she felt fulfilled in a way that she never felt before. So even though it breaks it down to be 127, it was 37 years of her life that made up for all the previous years of hardship. So remember, she left everything she knew. She left her family behind. Yes, they took Lot with them, but Lot wasn't exactly, the greatest brother in the world here. She left everything she knew behind to travel with Avram into the desert. And I say because of the fact that she had already kind of separated herself when she changed her name, that she was able to do this. She wasn't leaving to hearth and home, but it wasn't easy. We've all done it. We've all left our homes behind, our homes of our childhood, our parents, our siblings, and we've moved to different countries. It's not easy. Yes, we do it and we enjoy our lives for the most part, but no one ever said it was easy to do so, right? So she worked on herself. She had a hard life. 37 years, she had a child. She was 100 years old. She was married to Avram for years. She finally had that child. It was a different level of fulfillment and completeness than any of the other previous years. It made up for all the previous hardships she had suffered. Okay. So there is an idea here that her days were complete and that her years were perfect. It also talks about her nights. The Chasam Sofer comes to say normal people don't account for the nights, but at tzaddik, even at night, his actions are for Hashem. So I asked my husband, first of all, gets a big credit for this because he helped me a lot with these extra maforshim, because he does the Hebrew and then sends it to me in English. So thank you. And I said, what are we trying to get at here? And he's told me that even at night, she didn't stop doing what was right. She was always doing things for her brother. She didn't waste a moment of her life. And this is, Chasam Sofer brings it as an idea from Ashes Chayil. Medrash Tanach says about Sarah, she gets up while it is still night. Extra words show a double life. Twice normal portion, basically that she didn't waste a single moment. People go to sleep at night. Sarah didn't waste time sleeping. I don't know that she didn't ever sleep. I didn't say she never slept, but she took every moment of her life and put it to use. How we darshan that, whether she slept all night, she didn't sleep. We're not meant to connect to the fact that sleeping is not a good idea. We all need sleep in today's world. But when we're not sleeping, we shouldn't be wasting time. That's the idea behind it. So Rabbi Akiva really liked this idea from the Chasam Sofer. Not from the Chasam Sofer. He liked this idea that she didn't waste time. And he uses it with his students. And this was really kind of cool because why not? So when he wanted to wake up his students, people, he said to them, look at Sarah, who lived 127 years, complete without dozing. Esther imitated her and was able to rule 127 nations. Okay, so what is he coming to say? He's saying to them, you're in the middle of a shiur and you're sitting here falling asleep. What are you thinking? What are you doing? This is the time. This is your time. Look at your matriarch. Look at Sarah. She didn't waste a single moment of her life. Look at Esther. Esther was able to rule 127 nations because of Sarah Imeninu. Like, now Esther's life and Sarah's life, neither of them were easy. There was a lot of Hester Punim happening. It wasn't so simple for them. So, what I took from the Hester Punim is that even when life gets hard and we have challenge after challenge, after challenge, and Nisayon after Nisayon after Nisayon, and we get frustrated and we just want to throw in the towel. Sorry,
sorry, just saying that, like you can say, okay, this is what Hashem's given me, and like that's what Hashem gave me, or you can say, this is what Hashem's given me, and not give up. And
exactly.
try and turn it around, and
right. So we want to use our challenges to grow. We don't want to just throw in the towel and give up. Challenges are there to make us grow. And I was telling Janet yesterday that when you go 30 days without a challenge or a test, it's not actually a good thing. Hashem is kind of ignoring you. You want those tests and those challenges, even if they're tiny. Even if it's just, do I really want to make lunch today, or do I just want to not, whatever it is, everything that we do in our life, when it's a struggle, it's a sign from a Kadosh Baruch. Okay. Now the Chasam Sofer and the Ramban disagree on the breaking up of Sarah's years. The Rambam comes to ask a question: how can it be a good thing that her years are broken up in such a manner when we see, because the Rashi teaches us they're equally good. That's why he broke them up. But Rambam disagrees about why. He says, he asks the following: anything breaking up the years would teach the opposite. Autumn's years were broken up, and so were Yishmael's. In fact, the Gemara mentions Chasdei Beis Hashveira, who said, fortunate are we that we're not embarrassed in our old age, that our years are not the same. In other words, the righteous are not as they were as children, but they grew. They grew every year. So the Chasam Sofer brings the same Gemara as proof that the pasuk means that in her old age she was young again. Her hard years were made up for her by her good years, and that she never. We can say she sinned. She didn't sin. I'll leave it up to you to decide if she was perfect or not. But she took her life and she worked on herself. So even though Rashi says that all her years were completely good, Chasam Sofer is coming to explain to the Rambam's question that yes, we have to work on ourselves, but Sarah did that. That's why we can say that her life was completely good. She spent every moment working on herself. So yes, a tzaddik grows every year. Sarah did that constantly. Now the Chazal Lublin says that 100 years is reference to the 100 brachas that we're supposed to say every day, and the word shana here means repetition.
The word what?
Shana. Like Mea Shana, it means repetition. Shana means repetition. And 20 years refers to Chachma and Bina. It refers back to a pasuk in Koheles. Chachma is reference to Chachma Tichveh, while Bina refers to Eitz Chaim Hi Mizrachim Bo. Woman, we were endowed with extra Bina. It's a common idea out there that we have an extra Bina. It's different than what men have. It's called a Bina Yisera. It's a different idea. Men are endowed with more of a logical chachma. Women can see things in a very different manner than men. It's an extra level of knowledge. And we see this from Sarah when in the 20 years he breaks it up into two different ideas because he says that everything that's kadosh has to have at least 10. because he's referring to Imeninu, and we see Abraham prayed up until 10 for the cities. Once there's no longer 10 people in the city who are righteous, you can't save anything. So he brings down that 7 years is referred to Das, which he refers to passing different. I mean, Das includes Hashem's mercy and his greatness. And it's mentioned in a passage called Necha Hashem Agdula B'Gevura, refers to each of those things. That when we leave someplace, we're still knowledge as long as we're going in the way of Hashem. So.
Would you mind making a copy of your?
Yeah, I'll send it to you. So as I mentioned earlier, there's Hester Punim and Esther's story, and she got tired at some point. She's like, how in the world can I rule? I'm this Jewish woman who is now stuck with this horrible man, Achashverosh. But she turned to Hashem and she didn't give up. The story of her was completely hidden in Hashem's hand. That's what I said. Achashverosh.
Esther.
Esther. So we see that because Sarah was a princess of the world, Esther was able to rule over 127 nations.
Is Esther a Gilgul of Sarah?
They don't say that she was a Gilgul. It says that she imitated Sarah.
I heard that she had the Shoresh.
It could be. I didn't see that, but I saw the Rambam says that Rabbi Akiva says that she imitated Sarah. So like I said, Sarah is the mother, right, of our nation, but she was the princess of the world, which is why Esther was able to rule over the world time. But only because she's our mother can we cleave to Hashem even when we don't see him. Today we live in a world of Hester Panim. Hashem's hand is hidden more often than not. Sometimes we get flashes of Hashgacha Pratis and we see Hashem's hand clearly, but more often than not, we don't see it. But because Sarah was our mother and she was able to get through the hard times, so can we. And Rabbi Akiva is reminding us when he's saying this to his students that even in the darkness, Hashem will still come to our aid. There will still be a Geula. Mashiach will still come.
Amen, amen, amen.
So I actually had a question about the tent of Sarah. We know tent, oh hell. We know that there was miracles that were performed, but it doesn't really talk about it until we get to Yitzchak and Rivka. But I really wanted to know more about it. So we looked it up and we found this idea that first of all, the three miracles that we know for sure that happened that are most commonly darshaned are that there was always fresh bread, there was always challah from week to week and enough to feed everybody, that the candles stayed lit from week to week until it was time to light them again for Shabbos, and the Shekhinah rested on the tent. And these things stopped when Sarah was nifter. And we see when we get to Yitzchak and Rivka that Yitzchak mourned for his mother for 3 years. And he's given credit for this. And my husband said, why? We only mourn for a year. Why is he getting credit for mourning for 3 years? So the Shari Aaron brings down on the Rabbeinu Bechaya that the loss of Sarah and these miracles was like a mini Chorban Beis HaMikdash. And mini Chorban.
So he wasn't just mourning.
Chorban, destruction.
Exactly. And when Rivka came, it was like the Beis HaMikdash was rebuilt.
Who says it?
The Shari Aaron on the Rabbeinu Bechaya. It's also seen in the Shem Shmuel slightly differently, but same idea. So we see that each of these three miracles compared to different things. So the bread compares to Lechem Panim, and the Beis HaMikdash, the Mishkan, which we know was there all the time as well. The candles is an Tamid, and there's a difference of opinion. Shari Aaron says the Shekhinah rested on the Horus, the covering of the Aaron, where the Shem Shmuel says the Shekhinah is like the Ketoris, the cloud from the inside.
May I ask you something? You talk about the oil. When Abraham comes down from the Akedah, she is living in one area and he's living in another area?
You mean it says she was living in Kiryat Arba and that's where she was buried?
Yeah, and he went to
Beersheba.
Bethlehem,
Beersheba.
Beersheba. So were they living together, or was it? Can you explain that at all?
I can't really explain it. My idea would be that it wasn't that she was actually living in Kiryat Arba, but it was like she lived there when he buried her there. As in, of course, she lived with her husband in Beersheba, and that's where the Satan came to her. But it also says that she went to these 3 giants and asked them to look and see what was happening on the mountain, Har Moriah. Okay?
I never heard this.
The
3
Satan
giants.
comes to Sarah. Avram is up on the mountain. Yitzchak comes to her and says, do you know what your husband is doing? He's going to kill your son, your one and only son. He's going to kill him. And she doesn't believe him. She says, go away. Leave me alone. But there's part of her that says,
I gotta check this out.
I got to check this out. What's happening here? So she goes to these 3 giants who may or may not have lived in the area of Hebron, Kiryat Arba, and says, can you see what is happening on the mountain? And
That's
they,
Kiryat Arba, that's where the giants are.
yes. So they say, we see the boy, and the father and the knife, and she kind of dies right there. And they say that it wasn't out of shock. Part of it was, because who isn't shocked by the fact that your husband's gonna kill your son, right? But it wasn't shock in the way we would understand shock. She was so excited for her son to be a sacrifice, but she also didn't want him to be a sacrifice, so she took his spot. It says that there's a couple different ideas. One says that she wanted to die at the same time as Yitzchak, and one says instead of, that she took his place instead of.
him.
And another idea is that the Satan used this to shock her. It was her time to go, but he couldn't take her in a time because she was so cleaved to a Kadosh Baruch Hu, kind of like David Amelech, that he had to distract her, he had to shock her. He had to, it's the same idea we see it with David Amelech. David Amelech was immersed in his learning all the time, but a bird distracted him. And it was at that moment that his soul was taken. All right. Just a quick idea on Hebron. Hebron has 4 different names. There's a lot of different explanations. I'm going to bring a little more Hasidic one just because this is what I started out with. My husband told me a bunch of them this morning from the Midrash, but it was a little late to add it to the Shir, so. Okay. Kiryat Arba is known for the 4 tzaddikim, or the 4 couples who were buried there. That's why it's called Kiryat Arba. There's also an idea that it refers to Adam, who was buried there, and that he was made up of all 4 elements. And they bring the 4 elements as fire, earth, water, and wind. Not air, but wind.
No.
Air, wind.
Wind.
According to the Pei Kadosh, it is called Hebron because Adam attached his soul to Hashem. Now we only see these 2 names in this week's parsha and in correlation to Sarah Imeninu. It's not called any of the other names that we're going to bring because Sarah was on such a high level that the other names aren't going to relate to her. The other 2 names are Mamre and Eshkol. Mamre refers to the idea that Adam rebelled against Hashem. It can also refer to the person, Mamre, who fought with Abraham in the war and was Abraham's friend. It's different ideas. Eshkol refers to the pasuk that Rivka says when she sends Yaakov away, why should I be bereft of both of you on the same day? As in, if he stayed, both he and Esav would have died. Don't know how or why they both would have died in a battle with each other, but why she sends Yaakov away. You can also, again, refer to the person, Eshkol.
I don't get it. What's the connection to Kilu Shchol?
Yes.
What did you say?
Try to understand how that's connected to the name Eshkol. It's Shchol, it's bereavement.
Yes. And an idea from that is that Hashem finds merit for those tzaddikim who aren't completely righteous. There's still hope for us, ladies. There's still hope for us. You have it. Don't give up yet. Okay? We're not completely righteous, but we do have our merits. And Hashem compares us to those who are completely wicked. And because he does that, he doesn't take everyone away. And there's peace in Israel. Okay?
Say it again.
Because people aren't 100% righteous. Not even every tzaddik is 100% righteous. He compares them to the wicked. And he sees that they are more righteous than the wicked are evil or whatever. And he doesn't take them away in the same manner. And so therefore there's peace among Israel, it says. But then
Israel.
among Israel, as in like there's peace. There's the Shekhinah is still here, it's still rested with us. It's still here. Okay, and then just a few lessons we learned from Sarah Imeninu. We must go out and seek truth in this world, even when it's difficult. We've all been through this journey to some extent. We found our truths, we're living them, but it doesn't stop at that. We have to keep learning and growing and trying to complete ourselves, and we do have to try and do some form of kiruv to the best of our ability. We see this from our matriarchs that they didn't stop. And we should not be afraid to speak up when our truths are questioned. And we should try and learn the answers to answer people who have questions about Yiddishkeit to the best of our ability. Again, not everyone is cut out to be going out and doing kiruv full time, but and we inherited the gift from Sarah of modesty, of nobility, being a princess among the nations. It's passed down from generation to generation, from mother to mother. And we must live our lives as we too can change the world. Because every action we take is representative of who we are. How we go out of our house, how we dress, how we look, it represents who we are to Jewish people and who we are as a person. People are judging you, sadly. Not only Hashem, but people judge other people. But in order for us to change the world, we have to continue working on ourselves. Because only through self-growth can we reach completion in ourselves, which will allow us to change others. So the more you work on ourselves, the more likely you are to influence others, not including your children. You will always influence your children, hopefully for the good, just by being there and showing them what you do on a daily basis. Questions, anyone?
Yeah.
Thank you. When was Haran?
It's not